I stumbled upon it by accident that IT was an old, unmarked archive box, forgotten in a far corner of the Sunflower County District Library storage room in Mississippi. A dusty lid, rotted edges, and a label faded almost into invisibility. Parchman Farm, 1951 to 1990. Internal. I was looking for something completely different. I was working on a piece about criminal justice reform, digging through statistics when a local librarian, a woman in her 70s with eyes that had seen too much, gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "If you want to know how things really were," she said, "look at this. Just don't say I showed you." That's how I first heard the name. Parchman. I took the box back to the motel where I was staying, and I couldn't put it down all night. Inside were copies of internal reports, inmate testimonies, and black and white photos with a strange caption. Field Unit 17, July 1972. Men in striped uniforms worked the fields with hoes, but it wasn't about work. Around their necks, chains. On their feet, shackles. A guard stood nearby with a shotgun and dogs. They called it an agricultural correctional program. I stared at those photos, read transcripts of internal investigations, and only one question echoed in my head. How could this exist in the 20th century? Parchman, officially the Mississippi State Penitentiary, was founded in 1901. But what I found in the reports made it clear. It was never just a prison. That IT was a plantation. 0.6000 acres of land, over 20 prison barracks, and racially segregated housing. Literally. Black inmates were sent to the fields. White inmates got light duties. This wasn't just racism. It was industrialized oppression, disguised as justice. In the archive, I found a quote from a 1956 governor's report. Parchman is a self-sustaining institution. The inmates work the land, and in doing so, they repay their debt to society. But the testimonies from former inmates painted a very different picture. Every morning, 4:30, they'd pull us from our beds, if you could call them that, out to the fields. Heat, snakes, dogs. You've got a hoe in your hand and a shotgun behind your back. If you stop, dogs. If you fall behind, the butt of a gun. That's from a letter by former inmate Henry Brown, dated 1974. He was arrested at age 17 for vagrancy. That was a standard method of replenishing the labor force. You were just walking down the road, and the court gave you up to 5 years. There were dozens of cases like that in the archives. People arrested for nothing and sent to Parchman. And there was a system of its OWN. In one internal memorandum written by a supervisory officer in 1968, I found a line I can't get out of my head. The trustees maintain discipline. It's the way it's always been done. Trustees, those were privileged inmates used as enforcers. They were allowed to carry batons, chains, sometimes even firearms. In effect, inmates controlling other inmates. The ones who broke vanished. No reports, no death records. Just one phrase in the logs. Inmate disappeared in the field. The deeper I read, the more horrifying this legal system seemed. Newspapers from the time, clippings from the Mississippi News, the Jackson Times, described Parchman as an efficient reform of the penal system. Governors boasted about farming revenues. Reports claimed low recidivism, perfect discipline. Between the lines, silence, and the bottom of the box, I found a folder worn almost to pieces. On it, a single word cut from a newspaper and taped on with yellowing tape. The whole. Inside, cell diagrams, photographs, disciplinary records. Again, internal documents that officially didn't exist. Parchman had its own isolation cells, but in reality, they were underground pits, no light, a wooden door that let in no air. Inmates were put there for anywhere from 3 days to 3 weeks. One report described the condition of an inmate found in one of those pits, severely dehydrated, body covered in open sores, incoherent, teeth missing. But that wasn't the worst part. In the margins of the report, written in pencil, "Let him stay. He needs to learn." I found one of the men who'd been through Parchman. His name is Leon Smokey Harris, 67 years old, living in a trailer in Greenville, 2 hours from the prison. He served from 1971 to 1980. 9 years for stealing a cash register with $42 in it that we sat on his porch. He smoked a hand-rolled cigarette and stared through me. "You ever hear Section 17?" he asked. "That's where we lived. That's where we died." "What was it?" "A field, man. Just a field. But it was cursed. It's got bones. I saw them dig up a rib bone with a backhoe once. They said it was from a dead animal. But it wasn't." He looked at me carefully. "You won't find the truth in papers. It's in the ground." 3 days later, I went to Parchman. Today, it's a medium security facility. At least, that's what it looks like from the outside. When I approached the fence, a guard in the booth asked what I wanted. I said I was working on a documentary about the prison's history. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Whatever you're looking for, it don't live here no more. Just ghosts left." I don't know what he meant. But an hour later, the storm hit. A thunderstorm like the sky was being torn apart. And in that moment, thunder, lightning, I saw him that a man in an old striped uniform standing at the edge of the field. No face, not moving. A second later, gone. Inside the archive were annual death records. But most had no explanations. Ivan Walters, died in field. Cause, heat stroke. James Hill, found unresponsive. No foul play suspected. Michael Taylor, disappeared, not recovered. And on a separate typewritten note, apparently by an internal officer in 1982. If we document every death, they'll shut us down. Better to call it natural selection. When I tried to get an official comment from the Mississippi Department of Corrections, I received a brief statement. Practices employed in the past do not reflect current values or methods. Today, we are committed to transparency, humanity, and rehabilitation. But not a single staff member agreed to speak on camera. One former officer anonymously told me, "What you found, that's just the surface. If you knew how many bodies are buried under those fields," that name wasn't in the archive. Corey Lawson, 24 years old. Convicted in 2019 for possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. 6 years. Parchman, exactly 1 year later, disappeared. The official report read, left the unit at 6:42 a.m. for agricultural work. Never returned. Search underway. I found his mother, Tamara Lawson, through an advocacy group that supports families of inmates. She met me at her home in Clarksdale. On the wall, his graduation portrait, suit, and red tie. I don't believe he ran away. I don't believe they couldn't find him. I believe they know. They're just not saying. She told me they sent back his belongings, but not his body. No explanation. Just a cold letter from the prison service. Our condolences. The investigation is ongoing. Since then, silence. The librarian met me again. The same one who gave me the box. "You're looking for what's always been hidden." With a map sent. Sector 7. Sector 7. It's not in the records. It predates the plans. They called it the farm tool shed, but the ones who worked there didn't come back. I found a reference to it in a 1961 inmate letter. Old man Randolph said there's a staircase under the barn in Sector 7. Leads down. He knew 'cause he dug there. Said he saw rooms without windows. Said he heard screams. I went back to Parchman. Again, in a storm, like the sky itself knew where I was headed, that I arranged a meeting with a guard, a former veteran with 6 months till retirement. For money and silence, he led me through the abandoned part of the prison, toward the old farms that no one was there. Rotting walls. Overgrown trails. A barn boarded up like it was trying to hide time itself. Behind it, a stone wall with a rusted metal door. He said, "Behind that door is everything you want to know. Just be ready." I pushed it open. A staircase led down 10 meters. Stone steps wet. The smell, rot, and metal. The first room, cells with no bars. Just cubicles with iron rings on the walls. Old rusty utensils. Blood on the floor. Decades later, still there. The second, a desk. Papers with names. Lines crossed out like names no longer mattered. The third, a pit. Just a pit, 2 meters deep. Inside, bones. Many. Jaws. Ribs. A piece of chain that I almost dropped my flashlight. They didn't bury. They dumped it on the wall of the last room. Written in chalk. Those who serve the land belong to the land. It wasn't just a motto. It was a belief system, a horrifying one, deeply rooted in the institution. Slavery didn't end. It just changed its clothes. Parchman was the last stronghold of that ancient darkness. I emerged at dawn. Back soaked, face covered in dirt, hands trembling. When I showed all to Tamara Lawson, she cried. But not from grief, from truth. Now she knew. Her son didn't just vanish. He was erased, like names in the old prison ledgers. This story isn't just history. It's an indictment. Parchman isn't just a prison. It's a symbol of a system where skin color and poverty are a sentence, where labor is chains, where oversight is fear, where death is just a statistic. Right now, as you hear these words, there are still people inside Parchman, still digging soil, still buried in silence. But now,